All right. Hey, Professor Rabi. How you doing? Nice sweater, by the way. I'm Keenan, and the book I'm doing a summary of today is Brotopia by Emily Chang, Breaking Up the Boys of Silicon Valley.
And I'm Cody, and the book I read was Hunger, a Memoir of My Body by Roxanne Gay. So, Keenan, I don't know if you want to just take it away and give a brief summary of your book.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. I was actually kind of planning on just, doing a little mini summary of each chapter to kind of to go through the book. Um,
Okay.
All right. So the overall premise of the book is, breaking up the boys' club or the dominant white dominant male of all software engineers in Silicon Valley and venture
Yeah.
capitalists. So the first chapter is it's called From Nerd to Bro, and it basically talks about in the 70s. It's a story about this girl who took an aptitude test and it said that she might be good at computer programming. So she pursued that and went to a school in University of Utah. And it kind of talks about how awkward it was that she was the only female um, student in that program, and how awkward it was just talking to some other students, how they would stop mid-sentence. They would kind of visibly be very uncomfortable when they would come in the room. Even professors would be kind of a strange experience for her. And around that time is kind of where the stereotype, the computer science stereotype was created, how the best in all programmers have to be antisocial, mathematically inclined, and definitely male. It talks about that a little bit, and then it goes into the PayPal mafia and the myth of mediatocracy, which the mediatocracy is basically, if you weren't familiar, it's basically saying that they hire people or they're selecting people based on their ability only, and their appearance or economic status or any of that doesn't matter.
Hmm.
So Peter Thiel, this one talks about the owner of PayPal, the creator of PayPal. He graduated from Stanford, where a lot of Silicon Valley tech people do, and he graduated, and him and his classmates worked on PayPal. And as it started to scale, he only hired people, and he quotes, he says, people, he only wants to hire people who look like him and have the same ideas as him. He doesn't have any time for, what he didn't realize was basically diversity or other outlooks.
Kind of weird.
So, obviously that became very popular and successful. And what that did was kind of create a template for, this is what successful entrepreneurs and people do from Silicon Valley: hire people out who just graduate, they hire their friends, and they work well together. And so it kind of created a template for other companies. And some of the co-founders from PayPal ended up being in businesses like Yelp and YouTube and LinkedIn and Zoom. So they're like a lot of the ones that we're familiar with today. And this chapter also said something kind of interesting about Stanford. Also kind of claims that they run off mediatocracy, where they only hire the best, or they only accept the best students based on their grades. But they point out that the average income for parents that where their students to go to Stanford, or the kids to go to Stanford, is like 2/3 higher than the average of everyone else. So obviously those kids had tutors and they went to private schools and better education. So that kind of goes against the whole premise of the definition anyway.
Hmm.
Then it goes into Google, and it says in this one, it's like basically that when Google was invented, it's not enough, like, because they try to hire more women and do a little bit better. Larry Page and Sergey Brin, they actually, when they were working and creating Google, they were in Susan Wojcicki's house, who was also a student who just bought a house and wanted to rent it out.
Huh.
So they ended up hiring her as the manager, marketing manager, to help them get going. And then their 20th employee was Marissa Myers, who ended up being there for a long time and then going to Google and going to Yahoo. And she was like the CEO of Yahoo.
Wow.
And Sheryl Sandberg, who was their VP of sales, she's currently the COO of Facebook. So they tried to include more women in tech instead of just what PayPal and a lot of other people did. But what they had a problem with when they were scaling, they didn't have enough women on, like, people applying, or they could find women engineers. So they actually did a freeze on hiring until they hired 20 women engineers in a row. So they tried, but then they kind of shot themselves in the foot when they had a gender and diversity memo that Google sent out. And it basically was saying that, and the internet went nuts. It was saying that biologically women are more agreeable instead of assertive and are less likely to compete for jobs. They're more sympathetic instead of systematizing priorities. So they were trying to do a scientific breakdown of why, maybe that's the reason there's not as many women in tech, and then an even smaller amount in like leadership roles.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was I believe the guy got fired for that and still kind of stood behind it. But
Yeah.
so the one of the most like interesting chapters is when women speak out. And I don't know if you heard about a while ago, they had um, people were saying, don't use Uber anymore, use Lyft. I don't know if you ever heard of that. And I didn't completely
Yeah.
know why. I'm sure it was
Yeah.
something related to that. But it basically was because there was an employee, Susan Fowler, and her first day at work, her manager was saying that he's in an open relationship with his wife, and she's having no problem finding partners, but he's having an issue. And basically, like, coming on to her the very first day, she
Wow.
complained, and then they said it was his first offense, so nothing happened. Then there was another thing where they ordered 120 leather jackets that say Uber on it, and then they didn't get any for the girls because they were getting a bulk deal, and then they couldn't really get a bulk deal for only 6 out of the 120 women. So she complained about that. She had a couple other valid complaints, and eventually Uber HR said, "It seems like you're the main reason, or for all these complaints. Like, maybe you're the problem." So
Wow.
naturally, she quit, and she got a job a week later. But she got out of that situation, and then the writer of this book, Emily Chang, she she put together and invited some Silicon Valley women engineers to come and discuss like being a woman in tech. And a couple of the stories were really interesting. One woman said that she was at a happy hour at a strip club with her, because a lot of the time they would have happy hour at strip clubs or parties and things that, not very professional, I guess you would say. She was
Yeah.
at a strip club and it was getting late, and she wanted to leave, and one of her drunk male employees didn't want her to leave and got angry and like grabbed her by the neck. And
Oh.
she never reported it. I mean, she got away and was fine, like someone broke it up, but she never reported it, and kind of just like didn't want to risk her job. um, Other people, mainly at Uber, but there were some other companies too, they would say the rape jokes are just ubiquitous. They would say stuff like, "Hey, grab her legs, like rape her real quick." I'm just joking. And
Oh God.
that bro culture that you want to, the women, I'm assuming, are like, haha, that's funny, but it really happens to real people, and is probably a scary
Yeah.
situation to even joke about. um, so Uber and those kind of companies like that, you know kind of had a big happy hour culture. They wanted their employees to stay there, so they would have beer. They probably still do. They would have beer and kegs on tap, free food. So they create this like area where you're really comfortable, but the party atmosphere is encouraged, and some people even get drunk during the day at work. Um, And also that comes with employees sleeping with other employees, employees who are married sleeping with employees. Um, the people who are sleeping with the CEOs and partying with them usually get promoted quicker and are on the better side of management. And it's kind of a double standard because a lot of the women would, if they did go out, they would look irresponsible and they'd be less respected from other women and everybody in the company. But if you didn't go, you look like a prude and you missed out on opportunities. And how that ended up all coming to a head was Susan Fowler ended up writing a blog, and it was basically talking about her situation, and it inspired a bunch of other women to come forward, and it resulted in 20 Uber employees getting fired, and the CEO Travis Kalanick getting fired too. I forgot to mention Kalanick, but one of his situations was one of these women was so burnt out from working for him and was dealing with depression and was going through some issues, and she kept reaching out to him, and eventually she was able to like corner him at a meeting once, and she said, hey, listen, I need some help. I am depressed, I'm overworked, and I'm smoking marijuana when I go home religiously just to get by. And his response was, oh dude, I've never smoked weed before, do you think you could smoke me out? That might be fun.
Oh my
So
God.
just a level of like people actually reaching out for help and not getting it.
Jesus.
And he also had a lot of other emails he sent out about, hey, we're going to Miami for this team building thing. You only can sleep with someone if they say yes for sure. So I can't sleep with anybody because if I'm a manager, I'm not allowed to. My FML, like. So it's just really like pushing that, like sleep with each other, let's drink, let's party together culture, which typically isn't as easy or for women, especially when you're around drugs and drinking and then outside of the work setting. So, and then the next chapter talks about venture capitalists, and basically that's the same issue, but they party even harder sometimes, and they have deals and agreements that happen at these vacation retreats and parties where they're making deals in a hot tub and constantly going to strip clubs and things like that. And most of the venture capitalists women, the company, one of the main companies, they didn't hire a woman for like 45 years or something like that. They weren't like allowed to be in that position or respected that they could do that position, and they always get in trouble too, or looked at differently if they had kids. That became like the main topic. It's like, oh, you have kids, no one really asked the same question about to the guys. It's like, oh, how are you going to be able to, how can I agree on this deal with you if you have kids and that's your priority?
Wow.
So the venture capitalist one, and then it goes into sex in the valley. And I'm going to check the time real quick. Okay. So I'm going to speed this up. So that basically there was polyamory and sex at a bunch of parties where CEOs, when that's a lifestyle and that's fine, but they would, bring these young girls to these parties, and basically, they can do what they want in terms of if it's not illegal. I mean, I guess they were all doing Molly and stuff like that, but they're putting these women in these positions where to explore their sexuality, they're doing it with their CEOs and the CEOs' wives. And then once you go to one of those parties, a lot of stories they were saying that other men would just approach you all the time, thinking that you're just some kind of like sex freak. So that's a toxic environment too, where they're trying to get away from monogamous relationships. And a lot of these guys, these tech dudes, they basically say they're more powerful than celebrities. And you watch a movie once, but you can use a product for years. And a lot of them were like virgins until they're in their like late 20s. So they're just out trying to have fun and they're not trying to settle down. So that's a big part of the culture too. Family in tech, they talk about how they set up these multi-million-dollar facilities with ping pong and free food and yoga, but none of them have like a daycare center. and
Ugh.
they set up a lot of these awesome work environments. So you'll stay late, and they were making sweaters that said 90-hour work week and proud of it and happy. So that culture can't doesn't really work well for people with kids and families, you know.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so they kind of skip out, and you know that's another reason that it's hard for women to work in tech. They talk about trolling, how Twitter makes it really hard to take information down, and even the Emily Chang had a guy on Twitter that was harassing her and putting her address and her husband's name, and still to this day you can see all that information on Twitter. It couldn't, for some reason, it's freedom of speech, you couldn't take it down. And the last two things is when they talk about video games, there was a game in 1983. It's called Cluster's Revenge.
Oh,
Cluster's Revenge. Have you heard of that?
yeah, that's a really bad game, man.
Yeah, I Googled it just to see, and it's like, yeah, basically, um, the premise from the part that I saw is a Native American woman tied to a cactus, and you rape her, and every thrust you get points.
Yeah, it's
Um,
awful.
so we talked about that in class too, not that specifically, but how the video games aren't representing women very well, and Grand Theft Auto. Um, that was like one of the top, I think the fifth iteration was like the top game sold ever, and you can rape or sleep with prostitutes and then murder them, and then you know.
Yeah.
So they talk about the angle of women in that too. And the last thing that was kind of interesting was Slack was one of the first companies that actually had, when they first started out, was a 50-50 split between men and women, which
Wow.
was kind of nice. So they're a pretty diverse company, and they were explaining that the CEO works hard to understand that he can't get a diverse perspective because he's go down the line, white, privilege, this. So you know he understands the value in having women, some other people. So yeah, so that's the premise of the book.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to mention any.
So is I guess the whole message basically kind of baked into that title where it's, it's women empowerment in Silicon Valley overall, or is it?
Yeah, I think it's just giving women more of a chance, and you know, because a lot of these companies and technologies, like you know, creating future products, and you know, basically creating some of the future, it's leaving out a huge dynamic and diversity perspective through women who could help with a lot of these issues, and it's just giving them a chance to, like, you know, even being paid, not paid as much, not in a way less role of in management roles too. It's like that's even, and it's interesting. It's all about women. They do touch a tiny bit on like race, and that's even a smaller amount. You know, having Latino or you know Asian males are pretty. You know, they're in the tech world a lot too, just like white males, but so I just diversifying, because we were creating these products that are for the whole entire world, for so to speak. So you got to have a perspective that people are going to use it. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. And like, I guess toward the end of the book, was it kind of more hopeful that like it was changing in a more diverse way? Like, was
Yeah, it
that
was written in 2019, so probably the data and stuff was from 17 and 18.
okay?
But so I think hopefully it's gotten a little better. There was one message from the CEO of Slack, where they were saying raising awareness won't have much impact, but if you train people on actions they can take, then they can create impact. So I think it's they're hopefully moving in the right direction. Just for people like, you know, Emily Chang, who are bringing these things up, where a lot of these women were terrified to lose their high paid positions, and
Yeah, yeah. Oh wow, that's really crazy. With I guess did you enjoy the book at least, or like, is there anything that you were kind of iffy on it or wanted to see more of?
um I did enjoy the book. I think it's a great perspective for, a white male, like myself. I mean, I'm Spanish a little bit too, but predominantly white male going into tech. So I think it was a great perspective for me because I'll be one of these people hopefully someday. So I want to make sure that, I have that kind of diversity mindset, to bring to the table, and to not speak and interrupt women when they're trying to talk, or make stupid jokes that I think are funny and harmless but maybe are not so harmless. And overall, it's sad, but it's good to see that this perspective and what actually goes on, because I feel like you can so easily not think of it. You're just partying with your cool boss and stuff. But
Yeah.
um so yeah, it was I'm happy that I got this book assigned to me.
That's awesome. Do you would you who would you recommend it to? Like, would it be predominantly like white men, or like specifically people trying to go into tech, or anybody in particular?
I think it's probably most valuable for people going into tech for sure. Guys and women, because they, that could be um, an outlet, or an example of a voice that people could use. So, but I think we should maybe get to your book because we're already at 21 minutes. So,
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, no problem. My book was Hunger, a Memoir of My Body by Roxanne Gay. And this is basically, I thought one interesting thing was that on the cover of her book, she put the word my in parentheses. I mean, there's no really mistaking that it is a biographical book. And so it is all about her life. It chronicles her life from her childhood to her adolescence, her young adulthood, well into her adulthood, and where she's at now. And it was a pretty hard read, only because of she goes into pretty graphic detail and pretty vivid detail on kind of what adversities she faces in life. And so specifically, she surrounds her book by one moment when she was 12, and she was raped. And so when that happened, she talks about like how her family was very supportive and loving and nurturing, but she felt like she couldn't tell them. She, and that was, when she's 12 years old. So when that happens, she just kind of starts getting these body image issues because she feels like she's damaged, or it's very heartbreaking. It's a very heart wrenching tale.
did they say
But
who
it's
was from? Was it like family friend, or?
so yeah. I guess so when she was growing up, I guess she knew this boy from her neighborhood, and he was like a little bit older than her, and so she was 12, and she didn't really specify his age. She doesn't go into a lot of detail about him, for her own particular reasons, I suppose. Like at some point in the book, her father, she finally tells him, and this is well past everything that's happened, and she openly states that she won't tell her father anything about this guy. So I guess it was just a friend, and it's just a boy that was like in his teenage years, and she just wanted a lot of attention when she was that age, and she wanted approval from, and so trying to fit in and whatever, and then that happened to her, and then she just kind of talks about the rest of it, where in some ways it's a book about body image issues, but it's also a book about bodily autonomy in some ways. So she, as with any victim of rape or anything like that, or sexual assault, is they feel something was taken from them, and so she felt that way, and she felt damaged, and she I never really thought about this, but she brings up the point of she began eating a lot throughout her teenage years and into her adulthood, and she starts off her book by talking about how she had a bariatric surgery, which is it's a surgery for morbidly obese people, and so she was considered super morbidly obese, and she got this surgery, but she just battled weight her whole life. But it was that pivotal moment when she was 12, and that happened to her, and then it just messed her up. But she said that she was purposely trying to gain weight, so that nothing like that would ever happen to her again.
That's
And
so
that's just something
sad.
I never really thought of. Of course, as a man, and I've never had anything like that happen to me, but I never imagined that that kind of psychological effect would, you know, she had body image issues, but then she was also trying to protect herself in that way. And then she talks about that and how her family was very disapproving of her body weight, but she never told them why, and
Oh man.
all these different things. And so it's pretty crazy. It's a pretty heavy tale, but she goes through it. She talks about all of her different struggles, and she basically overcame it, at least, because she still went to college and you know did very well. So she got her bachelor's degree, her master's degree, her PhD. Um, Wrote
Oh
several
wow.
different books. Yeah, she's very accomplished, and so I don't know. I mean, at least she kind of overcame all that, but she does at the end of her book state like, well, I just always wonder what if that didn't happen to me when I was 12. Like, would I be super thin right now? Would I be, more, I guess, domineering in my field or anything like that? So she just kind of has this wonder, but she still has like the power of like that bodily autonomy where she's like, this is my body, this is what happened to it, but I don't let anybody kind of dictate, you know, what's going on with it anymore. And
Yeah, that's a nice perspective that she didn't let it destroy her,
yeah,
I mean, obviously it affected her, but she,
yeah,
kept moving forward and didn't let it just like define her whole entire life.
exactly, yeah,
All
yeah.
right, so hmm. So what do you think was the message of the book? Kind of
I mean, like I said, I guess it depends on who the reader is. Me being, a straight white male, like she's a Haitian American, so she's black, and she's a woman, and there's just so many different things. Like, my takeaway from it was this kind of, not necessarily woman empowerment, but like bodily autonomy, and the fact that she didn't let it break her, but she can admit that she struggled for a long time with things. So the message, is overcoming adversity for sure. But yeah, it's I would imagine it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
yeah, the psychology behind it is intense
Yeah,
because so many people now are just doing whatever they can to lose weight. It's like the main thing that people think about, and
yeah,
she's doing the opposite.
yeah, she talks about that too. She talks about being, her parents just pushing her into like they made her go to a fat camp when she was younger. She, growing up, just like going on different meal plans, diets, and she just hates the fact that everyone is so obsessed with the body. But you know, she accepts that, but she just hates that everyone is that body obsessed. I suppose.
Yeah, and it's sad that she couldn't tell anybody the whole reason she was doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm not great at keeping secrets. Like I'll tell people right away.
Yeah,
She
exactly.
kept
Yeah,
it
I
her
mean, I
whole
don't, I don't
life.
know how to, I don't know how to keep something like that under wraps for that long. But I guess she does, and maybe it is a perspective that I would need, just because, yeah, I would never think to not tell someone about this. But I guess she talks about um, the shame factor of it, how she felt like now her parents would, or her family or friends might find her disgusting or things like that. And in the end, she reconciled the fact like none of it was her fault. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty rough. Like,
So since it was such a heavy book, who do you think you would recommend it to, or who would be someone that would be good to get that perspective?
I mean, it's written by a woman, and it's her perspective. It's a biographical piece, and I think that probably any young woman who has either gone through something like that, because maybe it's just a way to find how to overcome something like she did. Um, she doesn't really give a play by play on how to do that, but she at least perseveres. But you know, in another sense, like as much as it could be for young women facing that same sexual assault or rape or anything like that, I think it was pretty invaluable for me to read it because my wife's pregnant and she has a daughter. Like it's going to be a daughter and or a girl, and so I'm basically scared because I get
Yeah.
these kind of tales, and but at least I am aware, and then I can have help bring awareness um, to my child and hopefully protect her from specific things. But yeah, I mean, I guess like the big message is if a parent's reading it, then maybe the message would be to try to make sure that you have open communication with your kid, that they could come to you for anything, especially to tell you something like that. And then yeah, for any women who are struggling with maybe body image issues or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Reinforcing, letting your kids know that you can come to me for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's a crazy connection because, in my book, they're, making these rape jokes and throwing around like, it's just for fun and stuff, but,
Yeah.
there's
Well, yeah,
real issues
exactly.
that happen and it's detrimental to people's lives.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, like I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty statistically like rampant that women are going to face sexual harassment, sexual assault, rape, anything like that, and way more likely than any man does. So like, I just yeah, those kind of jokes. Like I would imagine, especially in like a field like that, you're gonna it's just gonna you don't know what you're gonna trigger in someone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or how that's gonna play out. And so I mean, if they're cracking down on it, that's great. I would hope they do because, I mean, one, it's not even professional to begin with, but, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. You have any other connections or questions, or I think we're gonna wrap it up?
I think that was good. It was good to hear about your book and good to talk about mine. And
Yeah.
it's good perspectives all around, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Rabi, for doing an assignment like this, because this is a great perspective to get both of them. So,
Yeah, exactly.
all right. Well, this is another episode of Between Two Ferns. Thanks a lot, Cody. I'll see you later.
All right. See you, Keenan.